Recording. All right, and we should be good to go. Right, so Dad, you wanted to talk about it was the stock issue.
Well, the stock issue derives from the arm brace issue, and then the responses that ATF just put out to the gun owners of America.
Okay, so go ahead.
Let me go back just in history just a little bit, just to make sure that because the words have been mixed up, the definition has been mixed up. So it's kind of like the origin of this. Prior to 2012, if you put any type of device on the back of a pistol, and it started with the ARs, of course, ATF call that device a stock and then would regulate it as a short barrel rifle. So, what in the hell is a short barrel rifle? Well, a short barrel rifle is defined under the NFA. So, it's basically any firearm with a barrel or barrel less than 16 inches and designed to be fired from the shoulder. Then I'm going to paraphrase the definitions to make sure everybody understands layman terms. So, that means that if I put a stock on a pistol, it was no longer designed to be fired by one hand, as a pistol definition says. It's designed to be fired from the shoulder and basically with two hands. So ATF would classify these as short barrel rifles. Of course, SB Tactical met with ATF and designed an arm brace for veterans who needed assistance in their shooting hand to shoot these large AR and AK type pistols that were coming on the market. And ATF changed its whole history. Just since 1934, ATF said, hey, you're right. We're going to call these device arm braces. And if you put it on a pistol, it doesn't change the design of a pistol because you're going to may shoot it from the shoulder. We're still going to call it arm brace. So ATF went back and forth with letters, and they stuck to their guns and said, if you don't intend to shoot it from the shoulder, but you do shoot it from the shoulder, it's still an arm brace and it's not going to be redesigned. Well, you have some little, I'll give them some very favorable terms, jugheads in the firearms technology branch who began to find a way to make arm braces illegal because they didn't like them. Now you have some little technicians who believe they're the most knowledgeable people in the world on firearms. And then they came out and said, well, because the NRA manual, that's right, because the NRA manual identification guide has a page that says most stocks have a length of pull of 13 and a half to 16 and a half inches. Man, we can say if this length of pull, which is not a stock, it's an arm brace, if it has a longer length of pull than that, then we can call it a stock. So they came up with that. So
So
manufacturers are smart.
wait, so let me get this straight. The NRA, which reports itself to be almost the an antagonist of the ATF, they use something the NRA wrote, and the NRA is not a government agency or a lawmaking agency, to justify them trying to rewrite the law.
You hit it. They did not use a firearms regulation guide. They did not use the NFA. They did not use the Gun Control Act. They did not use any correspondence ATF had ever written. They found this page in the NRA identification guide where it's just a reference. What is a sight? What is a scope? What is a stock? And they use those parameters to say, okay, if your arm brace, when you put it on your pistol, has a longer distance from the trigger to the back of the arm brace than 13 and a half inches, we're going to call it a stock. So the industry said, okay, we'll remake them. So they made them shorter. So then they came out and said, well, if the rear portion where it opened up and goes over your arm is so big Now, listen to that word, so big that it could be used as a stock, no dimension, no measurement, no weight, no color, no anything. We're going to call it a stock. So this went on. And then,
Like that. So by that definition, if I were to epoxy a literal yardstick or ruler onto the back of my gun and wedge it into my shoulder, that's a stock.
yes, because now you have redesigned it by making it longer than 13 and a half inches. And now it's designed to be a stock. Okay. So this is, like I said, this is people initiated in the firearms technology branch using their attorneys to try to override their own letter opinions that they wrote authorizing arm braces.
So
So,
so so let's call them what they are. They are activist attorneys. They are in the ATF to try to limit Second Amendment rights.
well, even not even Second Amendment rights, because these are all rights. This is anything that they can qualify as non-allowable within the Gun Control Act and National Firearms Act. If I can find, let me say something really out there. If I can find a headphone that I can set a standard for it, but the people who make headphones have a standard that says it can't be bigger than this, and I find out that Joe made a red headphone when the parameters say you can never have a red headphone, then I can take it to the headphone industry and make Joe get in trouble because he made red headphones. It's very
Gotcha.
simplistic and it seems antagonistic, but that is really what these people do. You have people that really try to find a regulation or statute that will make something unlawful within those regulations and statutes. They couldn't find something, so they created something. I testified it in a federal court on behalf of Kellen Wright on an arm brace issue, and the jury absolutely laughed at the Farms Technology Branch explanation person. And
Mhm.
they, of course, they exonerated the young man. A 100% disabled Marine was exonerated, and his arm brace was called a stock. Now, listen to this. This one is really fantastic. He took a 1 inch cane tip puffer. It's hard to even say without laughing. So think about a walking cane,
Mhm.
and the tip has a little 1 inch rubber pad. And he put that on the end of the arm brace. Because he put that on that, he redesigned it to a stock. And you can pull up the case and you think, I'm fabricating this. This is how bad it was. So now they can't find a way. They've got a letter. They've nailed it in place. Even if you redesign this arm brace by putting it in your shoulder, it's not a stock. They created their own form so that no arm brace ever approved or in the future could be approved. And everybody remembers the form that came out. Can't remember what it was, 49.99 or something like that. They
Mhm.
went in with weight, length, distance, area in the rear. Did it resemble a stock? Did it not resemble a stock? So basically, any arm brace that had previously been approved would be disapproved. So of course, everybody sued and the public won. The gun owners won. The Fifth Circuit shoved it up there behind. It's now to Supreme Court. So people are selling arm braces like now again, selling
Mhm.
them like crazy because ATF can't do anything about it unless there's a decision that comes out and says, well, the Supreme Court has overturned public policy. Now you can call anything you want a stop. So in the meantime, the gun owners of America write in to ATF and say, look, not Gun Owners America, I'm sorry, an individual did and said, look, I want to buy this stock. It's on this Scorpion, I believe it was, but I want to make sure that I know I'm doing something legally. So ATF came back and basically said anything attached to the end of a handgun is a stock, and I'm paraphrasing it,
Hmm.
And if you do that, you'll be charged under the NFA as possession of short barrel rifle. So the GOA writes in right away and gets another response in a couple of days. And everybody is looking at this as a win, but when you read the two responses together, they really didn't change their response. They basically said, explain that if a handgun is designed to be fired from the shoulder, it can be regulated under the NFA, and there's nothing to stop ATF from regulating the NFA. But in the meantime, ATF is doing nothing until the Supreme Court comes back with their decision. So it's basically a nothing burger letter, just covering their butt, saying we're not calling it an arm brace because we're not allowed to. We're not calling the arm brace a stock because we're not allowed to. But if we are ever allowed to, arm braces will be classified as a stock and regulated under the National Firearms Act as a short barrel rifle. So this whole thing from the very beginning was created. Now, I was no longer in the firearms technology branch when this was created. I had
So,
moved
so,
over
uh,
to
so,
field
so,
operations.
Dad, just a clarification. When did you retire from ATF?
2016. But I left Farms Technology Branch in circa 2013, and I went over to a Firearms Operation Division. I'm
Okay,
sorry, 2014 to Chicago.
so, so whenever you left uh F FTB, did you know attorneys that were hyper litigious when it came to firearms like this? And you don't have to name names. I'm just curious.
I'll put it this way, and a good example was when Acting Director Sullivan came in. Uh, we had a lot of discussion of trying to change policy, and at the time, Farms Technology Branch was an extremely professional organization, and we looked at the requirements under the law, and we're not attorneys, but we would make technical determinations. And like, for example, the bump stock, we classified the bump stock as not being a firearm, and then years later they tried to classify it as a firearm. We had an attorney, and she ended up retiring as an assistant director, and she didn't like what Sullivan was doing with, because he was doing the right thing. He was the director, and her words were, directors come and go, and I'm still here, and I will be here when he's gone. So they go dormant until they can get an administration that is anti-gun. See, the job isn't to be anti-gun or pro-gun. What we were doing, the job is to interpret the regulations and the statutes in the proper manner. So the proper manner does not mean what I feel like when I get up in the morning tomorrow. It
I
means,
mean, it doesn't for you. But as we know, with certain political leanings, and not to go into too many detail, but certain religions that are hired by the Department of Justice, there's this idea that if you're not that ilk, I would say for both of those things, and not for all, but for enough that it matters.
well, I don't.
These people do not see U.S. citizens as either their equals or their customers. To use the friendliest term, the U.S. citizens should be considered the customers of the Department of Justice. Um, so I think when given the opportunity, and not to put politics too much into it, but we see the current administration trying to make it as hard as possible for the upcoming administration to a point where there's no historic basis in any government that I know of in the West have ever heard of, right? So we do know that exists. We do know, like sleeper cells, like Russian agents, they can stay dormant for a long time. For them, it really is the long game. Um,
I don't
eh,
want to even head down the conspiracy or religious area because you don't have to. I mean, this is just This is personal feelings, and they have personal vendettas that they are anti-firearm, uh,
Well,
and
Dad,
they
I mean,
and
just to make it even further, they are anti-other, and that's sort of the point I'm getting across. Is, and I'm not going to name the religion, but I'm sure you and I know which religion we're talking about. Um, Anyone who watches this will know which religion we're talking about. I'm not even anti that religion. I just know that
I just
some.
don't want to bring religion into it.
Oh, yeah,
We
yes,
don't have to,
but
because
but
there's
what I'm
enough.
saying is equal about that and the anti-gun side is they don't see who is not them as someone they should help out. And that's what I think is bleeding through is um I want to take Joe Q gun owner and whittle away his Second Amendment um enshrinement to as small as I can because he is not on my side. And it's a very what's happened is, and this is in all of the world, not just gun things, is a very emotionally driven segment of our population. Every argument about guns is emotional. It's not based on law. It's not based on fact. And I think probably, gosh, some of the same people um, who you worked with or alongside, this is their last gasp. Biden's out in a week. So,
But there's enough personal beliefs, and we'll just stick with that. There's people that have the personal belief that only they should dictate who should own guns. They should dictate who can go solar. Anything, any facet of our society,
yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is there
and
people
they
out
have
there?
kind of
Yeah.
ensconced themselves in the federal government, and they just coast along when they can't do anything. And then this administration was just allowed them to just go crazy, if not even allow them, but dictate them to them that they should find ways to make anything about firearms, because everybody thinks, well, who wants an arm brace? Well, what if I want one? What if you want one? Well, we can't stop the Gun Control Act, but you know what? We can go after that arm brace and classify it as a stock, so that we can probably prosecute somebody under the National Firearms Act. And look, it says a short barrel rifle is a rifle designed to be fired from the shoulder with a barrel less than 16 inches. That pistol with an arm brace is a short barrel rifle. So when you look at these letters, they actually are crafted very well. I give them credit. They're crafted very well. They're crafted, and they called out the NFA. They called out the definition of a rifle. They called out the definition of a pistol. They're crafted well. So the common person says, well, I guess it fits the definition of a short barrel rifle. Why should it be lawful? You understand
Well,
what I'm saying?
I I, I do, and what I'll add on top of that is I'm yet to hear a good reason why you can't have a short-barreled rifle. Why you should require a stamp. If you want to cut your what what's the standard barrel AR-20 16?
Well, the regular rifle is 20 inch, and the carbine is generally 14 to 16 inches.
So yeah, so if I want a 5-inch barrel on my short-barreled rifle, oh no, I can clear corners better. It might make it easier to shoot a bad guy coming into my house. It's just to me like to me any of these groups, be it the firearms policy coalitions, Gunners of America, what they need to be fighting is this whole idea that I can't have whatever barrel I want on my rifle. Could push me
Well,
even
well, they're
further.
actually fighting the NFA in its entirety. They are fighting the NFA, the National Firearms Act, because all of these firearms, short barrel rifle, shotgun, short barrel, I mean, sorry, short barrel shotgun, silencer, machine gun are regulated by the NFA. I do not see the NFA going away. I think there's a potential to remove silencers from the definition of the NFA. And here's the reason why. And no one is going to like what I have to say that is pro gun. And as you know, I work for the gun industry and I fight for the gun industry. Criminals continuously buy handguns and use them for criminal activities. And a straw purchase is if I buy a firearm for somebody who's prohibited from buying it and I give it to them. So that straw purchase happen every single day. No matter what we say, straw purchases happen.
Yeah.
If we make machine guns regulated just like a rifle, and Rick can go into a store, I was going to say grocery store,
Well, hey,
and
heck,
buy
any store.
an M249 machine gun,
My favorite.
and then I go out and sell it to somebody who's willing to use that with, let's say, a couple of 200-round bells, and he takes that downtown, and the carnage that is going to happen is going to be ungodly. Now, everybody goes, yeah, they can make machine guns illegal today. Some people can. But if they're available through straw purchases, through being sold at gun shows, do you think a senator or congressman on any side of the politics is going to sign off on that bill? It is not going to happen.
I could name maybe two, probably just one, and the only one I think could, and this is why I admire him, would be Thomas Massey. But he's also a very small government constitutional originalist, um, with a little bit of libertarianism sprinkled in. He
This is
might be
what
the
I
only
think
one.
would happen. I think they would strategically vote. So I'm in an area that no matter what I vote, I'm not going to be in danger. I'm in an area that if I vote the wrong way, there's a good chance I'm going to lose my seat. So they would strategically vote so that so many Republicans would vote, and they know they're not going to get enough support from the Democrats, so it doesn't matter. So many Republicans would vote for that bill to become law where there's no longer an NFA, and the other ones who were in trouble would not. But
So the
then,
Lisa Murkowskis and Susan Collins would, vote with the
absolutely,
left
and
like
then
they usually
all the
do. Yeah.
Democrats would stick together and they would not vote for that bill. So the Republicans would win. But I'm telling you right now, nobody wants that. We see, look what's happening in Chicago now. And I use Chicago because this is very highly where the Glock auto series are being used. I mean, on a daily basis, as you, if you're not aware, the media doesn't cover the crime in Chicago anymore because the mayor asked them not to. So the shootings that used to be shown on TV on a weekly basis, you and I used to laugh about how many people were killed in Chicago on a Friday night. They don't show that anymore at behest of the mayor. Could you imagine if cities like that, Houston, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, just one belt-fed machine gun legally went onto the street? And I say legally, it was bought at a gun store and then illegally sold through a straw purchase or stolen. What that would do, there would never be another Republican in office again.
Yeah, yeah, but and so I will say, e- even though I would have a, you know, anything goes attitude outside of, wearing a backpack nuke, um, I would I would say if I was willing to compromise how I feel on it, I would say, okay, you can have an M249 squad automatic weapon, but you are not allowed to have more than a 50 round magazine. Or you can have a select fire uh, AR-15 or AR platform weapon. Uh, you are limited, or you are limited to a 30 round magazine. And if we want to be California
Okay,
compliant, we can say a
I
10
buy
round.
230 round magazines. You see what I mean? There is no way to make this. They can do it. but they can't. It has to be a blanket law. So it has to all come on. And right now, they're fighting magazine bans all the way up to the Supreme Court from Chicago, Maryland, all these other states. So all those are being fought right now. So it's either you make the NFA illegal, you remove silencers and short barrel rifles and short barrel shotguns, because you hit it on the head. Why? And the reason, those were put in the NFA was because of the, Bonnie and Clyde and those people. I mean, his favorite gun was the sawed-off Browning automatic rifle and the sawed-off shotguns. So, of course, Congress jumped, and instead of controlling where these guns were coming from, where were these BARs coming from? Why didn't they figure that out? They just said, we'll do the easy congressional way and just make them illegal and make people like us, when they should have determined where the hell were these Brown automatic rifles coming from.
Yeah, and I don't think. Well, I won't even. I'm not going to say I don't think. I'm going to say the the genie is out of the bottle on violence in America because of our southern border, our ridiculous immigration laws of chain migration. We have a situation where guns or no guns, we're violent. We're violent because we're one of the most diverse um, countries in the world. And I don't care if that sounds like a racial or racist statement. The simple fact is there's a reason sometimes when I go to sandwich shops or taco places and they see my last name on the credit card, our last name, I get a discount. And people are like, oh no, that doesn't really happen. And I say, as far as I know, it's only white Americans who don't believe in tribalism. And I think they do, they're just afraid to admit it. And in those societies, you are going to have cultural clashes. You have incidences like years ago, that incident in New York, where two communities that generally got along suddenly were at each other's throats. It was the Orthodox Jewish community and the Black community because a rabbi ran over a kid and they had a revenge killing, right? This is America, and it's a violent country. And I don't think it makes a difference whether you're going to be Timothy McVeigh and take out a federal building with what's it, ammonium nitrate, was it?
Yes.
Or or whether you have a belt-fed saw. I, you know, and not to get too off topic, but I just think the ridiculousness of, oh, if you the if we put this plug in this 5-shot shotgun, so you can only put three that you can easily unscrew and take out, which is what I did to the Benelli I used to own. Um, I just took
Well,
it out.
like
Like,
real quick, the reason the plug is in there, those are waterfowl restrictions. You can't hunt
yeah,
waterfowl because in the 70s and 80s we were losing all the ducks and geese because of lead shot, and now they're overpopulated in the central. There's geese that you run over in a car in the parking lots now. So
but
this,
but I'm getting I'm getting to something. Is in that if I have something and I never commit a crime with it, but it by definition is illegal, whether it's in hunting circumstances or home ownership circumstances. Simple fact is if I have a select fire AR-15 and someone comes into my home and I light them up, I can then get rid of that AR-15, bring out my civilian AR-15 when the cops arrive, and say, well, I actually just shot him really fast. And who's to say I didn't? It, in other words, it's all just smoke and mirrors, and them too. And it's a little pissing contest in D.C. and we're the ones that suffer from it. And I'm sorry, I'm just Dad. I'm just tired of it, man.
all right, let's get back to our original subject. So basically, an arm brace rule allowed allowed to be put on a handgun was authorized by ATF. Now, after certain people didn't like it and the administration changed, they were able to put emphasis on it and make it like this evil, evil thing that because you have an arm brace and you can shoot the firearm with it, it's an evil thing. Based on the National Firearms Act, says that a rifle with a barrel of barrels less than 16 inches, designed to be fired from a shoulder, is regulated under the National Firearms Act since 1934. Yes, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, and silencers, on my opinion, should be removed from the NFA because it really doesn't make any difference anymore. I can shoot a pistol designed on an AR-15 platform, an AK platform, a stand platform, on and on and on and on. And the length really doesn't matter. And the short barrel shotgun and the short barrel rifle, I can illegally cut the barrel down and use it as a criminal in a matter of minutes. So
Well,
all of this,
and Dad, on top of that, Dad, is you could is you can convert a non-select fire AR into a select fire AR pretty quickly.
absolutely. There's parts being made right now as we speak that are going to be going in AR-15s and into Glock pistols. And you even have politicians that are trying to make Glock pistols illegal because another individual developed an auto sear to convert the Glock into a machine gun. So it must be Glock's fault.
So what you're telling me is, for once in the history of Glock, it might actually be worth buying one.
Yeah, yeah. They maybe, who knows? Well, I don't think under this administration they'll become illegal.
Well, Dad,
But
I'm just joking about Glock because everyone Glocks are the best pistols. It's like, so you've never shot an H&K, you've never shot a Sig, okay?
all right. Well, hey, I think that covers what
Well,
we
well,
wanted to cover today.
well, Dad, I wanted to cover something else, um, because both in real life and online, I've gotten pushback. You've gotten pushback about your even having considered working for the ATF. Even the fact that you would let yourself work for them. And I try to explain to people, first of all, it was a pay increase for being, a 22-year Marine. And I also tell people when you're in the military and then you later join the government, you believe everyone is going to have that sort of attitude because it's like, that they're in some way working for their country. Um, Now I got the rude awakening when I got to CBP and realized it was just a sieve where we filtered out some of the terrorists coming in and just let most people come and overstay. So that was my wake up call, right? And 7 years federal law enforcement. I did have that wake up call towards the end of like, this is all smoke and mirrors. No one knows what the heck they're doing. And I don't think a lot of people I work with really give a crap about this country. So to anyone out there who wants to leave comments about, oh, why are you interviewing this guy? He's against us. Like, Dad, I want to hear what you have to say about that. You know,
Well, when I went to work for ATF, I went to work for a federal agency. I was working for DIPMAC Security Service as a firearms and tactics instructor, but I was a contractor, and I actually took a severe cut in pay to go to ATF, and because with the overtime we were getting with DSS, I mean, this was 1997. The money was just unbelievably good. So it took a big decision to cut and run, but you just don't know how long these contracts will last.
yeah.
And so I went to work. As a matter of fact, one of our guys said, "Hey, you ought to look at this job that's posted at ATF as a firearms enforcement officer." And man, I didn't think I'd qualify, but I put an application anyway. And bigger than anything, I got called in for an interview. I got interviewed by Kurt Bartlett and Ed Owen, just two legendary guys. And it was a very professional organization. The people that I worked with,
And
I am
and what year was this that you went to ATF?
1999,
Okay.
so I'm still in contact and still work was several of the senior agents that were above me, did them and I still collaborate on things today. So I went into the government agency. I went, everybody, I had my FFL. I was a firearms instructor. I had to go my FFL, of course, because conflict of interest. But I went into ATF with my own personal beliefs about criminality, the laws, and stuff like that. And I learned a phenomenal amount working with those two gentlemen I named and with other personnel. But I quickly realized, and in '99, it isn't as bad as it is today, that the majority of people wanted to do their job. The majority of the people wanted to go after criminals. The majority of people that were inspecting gun shops would go in and correct them. They would even criticize later on in different administrations that they weren't taking away enough licenses. So
Gotcha.
they would go and they would literally coach people. Hey, look, there's things that you do in a gun shop that are criminal. You have to have your license revoked. You may be prosecuted, and there's any other things that are administrative. And then there's other things. For example, if I come and inspect you every year for 3 years, and every time I come in, you couldn't show me where you transferred a firearm or you transferred it, 6 months later, or you shipped it. You did all these things. Sooner or later, it gets to the point where I'm going to take your license away. And I use the example of open up a 7-Eleven and sell cigarettes to a 12-year-old kid and see what happens to you. You don't get a first chance or a second chance. That's it. You're done.
Yep.
Where the inspectors under the old administration were so lenient, and it finally got to the point that they had to take action. And then later on, they were directed to the extreme. One violation and he lose their license. And that happened last year under this administration. So when I went into ATF, I mean, they were respected gunfighters. They were the old revenuers and things like that. And I believe that I did a lot of good. A gentleman told me when I was leaving ATF, he says, "I'm really glad you're leaving ATF, but on the other hand, the industry is really sad that you're leaving ATF." Meaning they could get a response from me, and whether they liked it or not, at least I showed them. If I told them they couldn't do something, when we're talking about under technology, can I make this? Can I import that? Can I ship this? Under the technology section, if I demonstrated to them that they couldn't do it with the regulations, whether they liked it or not, they accepted it. So that was a very good, compliment to me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, ATF is used like a ping pong table, and under this administration, they were only shooting them balls one direction. There was no give and take. They were the champion ping pong player, and the public, were the losers. And they just keep shooting ping pong balls at us.
So,
So
so,
under this, go ahead.
so it's like, so I guess the question is even though today you may look at ATF as, like you said, just a tool of the administration who currently wants to uh, limit rights, especially towards firearms. I know we never even talk about the alcohol, tobacco thing, and explosives. So, so in that, if someone was to say, "Oh, if you could go back, would you ever even?" Let's pretend I'm your hardcore small L anarcho-libertarian son, even though I'm totally anti-libertarian, um, which might piss some people off, but I don't care. Um, and I say, "Well, how do you feel about yourself that you even work for that agency?"
I'm a professional. I do my job. I did a 21-year career Marine Corps the best I could. I did a job at Dipmac Security the best that I could. And I went to ATF and did the best I could, made changes where I could, stopped changes from being made where I could. But it's a government agency.
So,
And
so did you ever feel like you were fighting against other people in the agency to to curb the overstepping they had on citizens.
No, because that wasn't my role. I did feel myself fighting for opinions that we were making out of the Farms Technology Branch, and those were a group of people that had been there for years and were grooming other people to be just like them. And it's kind of like, I don't want to. They weren't really anti-gun, if you can really believe that. They were anti, what do what does my group believe against what your group believes.
Mhm.
So they would want to interpret regulations in a skewed manner just so they could win. It was all
Gotcha.
about winning. It was not all about doing the right thing. I never forget a gentleman who stopped a process that all of ATF had been allowing to happen since ATF went over from Treasury to Justice. And he convinced his supervisor to go to DOJ and ask for a formal DOJ opinion. And we knew what we were doing was wrong. Everybody, and I can't even say what we were doing. What we were doing was incorrect, but it benefited the industry and the military and police. So it was one of these things that we're doing it wrong because Treasury allowed ATF to do it wrong. And under DOJ, we just kept on doing it. It wasn't illegal, it was just wrong. He gloated like a little boy who found a bag of Oreo cookies and nobody was home. Gloated and even said something like, I knew the money I spent on my law degree would serve a purpose. And we're just like, I didn't even acknowledge him. Like, don't even speak to me. So it's not a matter with a lot of these groups as anti-gun. It's, do I win? Because the agents want to lock up bad guys. They're
Yeah.
told you got to go do 4473s. The inspectors want to go make the gun dealers do the right thing, and they're told you better find something to take their license away. And one of the things that no one ever thinks about is there's a lot of young people that can't walk out of a job. You can't do it. I could do it. I was retired from the Marine Corps. I could start doing something anytime I wanted to. All of my children had finished their university, so man, I was free, and I was walking out the door anyway, and I realized that I could take a two penalty retirement, so I took a very small retirement and walked out the door. So a lot of these people have to go along because they can't afford to lose their job.
Yeah, it's sort of like and this is a little different, but we had the FBI agents who were told to prosecute the J6 guys so harsh, who were then on Capitol Hill and were on unpaid suspension because there are some vindictive people out there.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of them work in the government because if you think about it, most government jobs, the requirement is a bachelor's degree, right? I have my bachelor's. I got my 4-year degree in 3 years. I learned nothing in those 3 years that made me more qualified for a federal job. It's just checking a box. And to tell someone you're going to have your either bachelor's or master's, go apply for the FBI, you pass your background, you never did drugs, here you have a job. You give them a gun and badge, you give them the authority. They've never had an experience where they are really, unless they do something really bad, at risk of losing their employment, the last thing they could ever do is want to quit. And I'll tell you right now, those 2 years I was at Customs, I saw people who I would talk about the problems with immigration, and they didn't even want to hear it. They wanted to clock in, get their double time overtime, which is what we got instead of 6C. They and if something got in, oh well. I mean, and I don't want to get too off topic, but just those 7 years in government service, I can I can count on my hands how many people I think genuinely made a difference. It was either my last day or second from last day of work, and I tell people this. With CDP, I'd already had my stuff because was getting ready to transfer to FAMS. I got someone deported that I truly believed if I'd never done anything the rest of my time in that agency, I genuinely believe I stopped a terrorist attack. Whenever I sent it back, the enforcement officer said, Rick, he goes, I'm glad you sent that guy back. He's like, something was up. He said, here's the part. He goes, but we are so hamstrung by the Napolitano um, Homeland Security that we have to write it in such a way that the person who shouldn't be here has more rights now than they should have. So I sat down with him and we documented it in such a way that we had to legally check boxes to kick him out of the country, to send him packing home to Saudi Arabia, right? And just the fact that that is so difficult, whereas your inspectors in ATF can so quickly violate someone, tells you how messed up this whole seesaw is. It's really it's weighted against the people. So when people say, "Oh, abolish the ATF," um, and we interact with some extremists, being on gun Twitter and stuff, uh, and I mean, I would not say don't abolish the ATF, but let's make sure we have something in place so that whenever a certain other three-letter agency would take over, and they have shown over and over again that they're very anti-citizen, we don't get screwed over even more. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, Dad, you are evil forever. Ever you worked for the ATF. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
So in closing,
That's, that's my little
read those
thing.
letters really well
Hey, Dad,
about
tell
under.
people what to Google to find the recent letters.
It was under. Good Lord, I just looked at it. Uh, the second letter, they just read it off. If you just type in "Gun Owners of America" recent letters on the arm brace to ATF, you'll get it. You may have to click through a couple of videos. They haven't posted the second response yet. They did post the first response, and nothing's going on right now. They can't do anything, but just and let's hopefully hope that a new director is appointed soon. That's gonna, get that big boat on clear water.
I mean, and I mean, of course, I know we're both hoping for Brendan Herrera,
Oh,
right? Anyway,
leave that out. Leave that out.
I'll leave it in. I said it. Uh, hey, Dad. So sort of in summing this up though, I think people need to realize let's not like if people disagree on certain firearm things and rights things and political things, you can disagree without being disagreeable. If people want to say, oh well, Rick Vasquez sucks because he used to work for Homeland. Rick Vasquez Senior sucks because he worked for ATF. It's like judge people by what they're doing now. And I think you and I are both advocates for the gun rights
Oh,
of citizens.
of
Yeah.
course,
Okay.
without a doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think there should be any restrictions whatsoever on my ability to own a firearm.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. And that about sums it up. All right, Dad. I'm gonna go ahead and end the video, but stay on because you and I can chat for a minute. Thanks for watching,
I
guys.
hope